Have you ever felt invisible? Like you poured your heart and soul into something, worked late, showed up early, sacrificed holidays and weekends, only for someone else to step forward, take the credit, and leave you standing in the shadows? This is a story about Melina, and about how the quiet strength of integrity can shatter the loudest injustices. Melina wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She was 35 years old, a project coordinator in Bremen, and she was the kind of person who made the trains run on time, who caught the mistakes no one else saw, who anticipated problems before they arose. She was the bedrock of her department, but no one seemed to notice the ground she held firm. While others celebrated holidays with family, Melina was at her desk, ensuring reports were filed, client emails were answered, and urgent tasks were completed. Christmas, Easter, even her own birthday often found her hunched over her laptop, the office silent and still around her. She didn't complain. That wasn't her way. She believed that hard work, dedication, and quiet competence would eventually be recognized. Surely, someone would see the late nights, the early mornings, the way she seamlessly handled crises that blindsided her colleagues. Surely her efforts would accumulate into something tangible, a promotion, a bonus, or at the very least, a sincere word of appreciation. The company was doing well, thanks in no small part to the smooth execution of projects she managed, the potential pitfalls she expertly navigated away from. Profits were up, morale, for some, was high, and the air was thick with anticipation as bonus season approached. Melina allowed herself a flicker of hope. Maybe this year would be different. She thought of the extra projects she'd taken on without being asked, the complex cross-departmental initiatives she'd coordinated, the way she'd personally smoothed over difficult client relationships inherited from less diligent colleagues. She had data, in her mind, a silent tally of her contributions that far exceeded her job description. She polished her resume, just in case, dreaming of finally having her salary reflect her true value. She envisioned a conversation with her manager, Herr Braun, where he would smile, commend her exceptional year, and offer her the recognition she so desperately craved. Perhaps a senior coordinator role, more responsibility, more influence, and yes, a significant bonus to finally put a down payment on that small apartment she dreamed of owning. This quiet hope sustained her through the final busy weeks leading up to the evaluations. She saw colleagues chattering excitedly about their expected payouts, overheard snippets of conversations about promotions being finalized, and felt a knot of anticipation tighten in her stomach. She continued her meticulous work, her dedication unwavering, believing that her performance spoke for itself. The office buzzed with a different kind of energy now, a pre-holiday, pre-bonus buzz that felt entirely foreign to Melina, accustomed as she was to the steady, quiet rhythm of her own consistent effort. She watched Herr Braun move through the office, a man whose presence seemed to expand to fill the room, his laughter often loud, his conversations always seemingly important. He was a man who commanded attention, a stark contrast to Melina's deliberate invisibility. He was the gatekeeper, the one who held the keys to recognition, and her future seemed to rest in his hands. The thought was unsettling, but she pushed it down. Her work was undeniable. It had to be. The day arrived for performance reviews. Herr Braun called employees into his office one by one. Melina watched the faces of her colleagues as they emerged, some beaming, some neutral, a few looking disappointed. Her turn came late in the afternoon, the office beginning to empty as people left for the day, eager to start their holiday weekends. She walked into Herr Braun's office, a small, sterile room that always felt colder than the rest of the building. Herr Braun sat behind his large desk, framed by certificates and framed photos of him shaking hands with important-looking people. He didn't offer her coffee, didn't stand up, just gestured to the chair opposite him. Melina sat, hands clasped in her lap, a practiced composure masking the flutter in her chest. Herr Braun opened a file on his desk, scanned it briefly, and then looked up, his expression unreadable. "Melina," he began, his voice flat. "We're reviewing performance for the year." He spoke about general company performance, targets met, and strategic goals. He mentioned departmental successes, projects that had gone well, many of which, Melina knew, she had been instrumental in. But he spoke about them impersonally, as collective achievements. Then he got to her performance. He rattled off a list of her tasks, her responsibilities, acknowledging that she was reliable, that she completed her work on time. It was a factual recitation, devoid of any warmth or recognition of effort beyond the basic requirements of her role. It felt like reading a job description, not a performance review. Melina listened, her hopes slowly beginning to curdle into apprehension. He finished his summary and paused. Melina waited, bracing herself for the but or the however that always seemed to follow lukewarm praise. And it came. Herr Braun leaned back in his chair, a sigh escaping his lips that sounded more bored than sympathetic. "Look, Melina," he said, his tone shifting, becoming almost dismissive. "You do your job, you're reliable, we know that." He shuffled the papers on his desk. "But, well, to be frank, this just wasn't your year for advancement, or for a significant bonus." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Melina felt a cold wave wash over her. She had worked every holiday, every single one. She had put in countless extra hours, handled difficult situations, mentored newer colleagues, picked up slack repeatedly. Wasn't your year? What did that even mean? I don't understand, Herr Braun, she managed, her voice quiet but steady. I believe I significantly exceeded expectations this year. I took on extra projects, ensured deadlines were met under difficult circumstances, improved several processes. Herr Braun held up a hand, cutting her off. Yes, you did fine work, Melina. Adequate work. But we're talking about exceptional performance. Stepping up, showing leadership, bringing in new initiatives. That's what earns bonuses and promotions. He gestured vaguely. Others. Others demonstrated more. Visibility. More impact. Visibility. Impact. Buzzwords that seemed designed to dismiss her quiet, foundational work. He was rewarding flash, not substance. Rewarding those who appeared busy and important, regardless of their actual contribution or the sacrifices made behind the scenes. The injustice of it was a physical blow. All the hidden hours, the swallowed frustration, the unwavering dedication, it was all reduced to adequate. And visibility seemed to translate directly to whoever Herr Braun happened to notice or like more. He didn't see her working late, he was already gone. He didn't see her solving the complex problem, someone else reported the solution. He didn't see her steady hand, he only saw the results, and credited them to the team, or worse, to himself. He closed the file with a soft thud. So, no significant changes for you this year, Melina. Keep up the reliable work, of course. And maybe next year, try to be a bit more proactive. More visible. He smiled thinly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Now, I have other reviews. You can go. Melina stood, her legs feeling unsteady. She nodded, unable to speak. She left his office, the cheerful holiday decorations in the hallway suddenly feeling like a mockery. She walked back to her desk, the office almost empty now. She sat down, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, illuminating the sterile space. Wasn't your year. The phrase echoed in her mind, a cruel summary of her entire effort. She looked at her monitor, at the perfectly organized files, the meticulously planned schedules. All the evidence of her dedication was right there, on her screen, in her work, in the smooth functioning of the projects she handled. And yet, it hadn't been enough. Because it hadn't been seen, or perhaps, it had been deliberately overlooked. A new feeling began to stir within her, one that replaced the bitter disappointment. It was cold, hard, and resolute. If her work wasn't enough to be seen, perhaps the absence of others' work would be. If she couldn't prove her value by showing her own actions, perhaps she could prove it by documenting the disparities, the inconsistencies, the outright unfairness that kept her down. She opened a new, blank document on her computer, a simple text file. She named it something innocuous, something that wouldn't raise suspicion. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the principle, about the corrosive effect of unfairness on a workplace, about the hidden costs of overlooking the quiet contributors. And, with a deep breath, Melina began to type. The first entry was simple, factual: date, time, observation. It was the start of a ledger, not of grievances, but of facts. The truth, meticulously recorded. Melina started documenting everything, not just her own work, though she continued to keep precise records of her hours, her tasks, the projects she managed, and their outcomes. She went further. She began observing Herr Braun and her colleagues with a new, clinical eye. She noticed the casual lateness of certain team members who received preferential treatment. She recorded instances where Herr Braun assigned urgent, high-profile tasks to less capable colleagues, only for Melina to be quietly brought in later, often after hours, to fix the inevitable problems. She noted the bonuses awarded, comparing them to the recipient's actual, verifiable contributions or lack thereof. She cross-referenced project success metrics with the names of those publicly praised, and the names of those, like herself, who had done the foundational heavy lifting. Her documentation was relentless and dispassionate. She wasn't writing a diary of her feelings, she was building a case file. She used timestamps, attached relevant emails, saved discreetly to a personal cloud storage, noted meeting outcomes, and tracked project milestones, clearly delineating who was responsible for what, and more importantly, who delivered. She documented instances where Herr Braun misrepresented project statuses to upper management, claiming successes that were either delayed or only achieved thanks to last-minute interventions she performed. She noted his frequent long lunches, his delegated responsibilities that were never followed up on, his inconsistent application of rules regarding flexible hours or sick leave. It was a hidden, parallel workload, conducted with the same meticulousness she applied to her actual job. She worked even longer hours now, staying late not just to finish official tasks, but to pore over old emails, cross-reference calendar entries, and add new observations to her growing document. The innocuous file grew, section by section, becoming a detailed, undeniable chronicle of the departmental dysfunction fostered by Herr Braun's management style. There was a strange, quiet power in this secret work. It was empowering to know she wasn't just accepting the unfairness. She was actively, deliberately, building something that could challenge it. It was also terrifying. She knew that if Herr Braun or anyone loyal to him discovered what she was doing, her job would not just be at risk, her entire professional reputation could be destroyed. She carried this tension constantly, a low hum of anxiety beneath the surface of her calm exterior. She became even more withdrawn at work, focusing intensely on her tasks, avoiding casual conversations that might inadvertently reveal her shift in perspective. Colleagues who had received bonuses or promotions seemed oblivious, basking in their validated status. Herr Braun continued his usual routine, perhaps feeling secure in his authority, unaware that one of the quietest people in his department was systematically dismantling his foundation. Melina observed him, seeing not a powerful manager, but a man whose position was built on shaky ground, on overlooked details and the exploitation of those who lacked visibility. She saw his casual dismissal of her efforts now not just as a personal slight, but as a symptom of a larger pattern of negligence and unfairness that likely extended beyond her. Her documentation began to uncover inconsistencies in budgeting, in resource allocation, in reporting lines that didn't quite add up. It seemed Herr Braun's visibility and impact were often achieved at the expense of accuracy and fairness, relying on the quiet competence of people like Melina to clean up messes and fill gaps. While taking credit for the illusion of smooth operation, the thought solidified. This wasn't just about her year, not being her year. It was about a systemic issue, enabled and perpetuated by her manager. Her initial feeling of personal injustice broadened into a sense of responsibility. If she didn't do this, who would? How many other quiet contributors were being overlooked, their efforts subsumed by others, their potential stifled by a manager who valued appearance over performance? The weight of this realization settled upon her, heavy but also clarifying. Her documentation became more than just a personal act of protest. It became an act of quiet justice, a meticulous pursuit of truth in a system that rewarded artifice. She refined her methods, creating backups, encrypting files, ensuring her digital footprint was minimal. Her dedication to this secret project mirrored the dedication she showed in her day job, a testament to her inherent thoroughness, a quality Herr Braun had dismissed as merely reliable. He called it adequate. She was finding it was her most powerful weapon. Each entry, each saved email, each time-stamped observation was a brick in the wall she was building. A wall of undeniable fact against the edifice of performance reviews based on bias and superficial observation. The work was lonely, isolating, and fraught with risk, but the quiet conviction that she was doing the right thing sustained her. Days turned into weeks. Melina's file grew into a comprehensive dossier. It detailed specific instances of unfair treatment, inconsistent policy application, misallocation of resources, and questionable reporting practices, all traced back to Herr Braun. She had amassed a significant body of evidence that painted a clear picture of a manager whose leadership was not only detrimental to individual employees, but potentially harmful to the company's integrity and efficiency. The emotional distance she initially felt, viewing her documentation as a purely factual exercise, began to erode. Rereading her entries, seeing the pattern of dismissiveness towards her and others who quietly excelled, the pattern of rewarding superficiality and self-promotion, ignited a quiet anger within her. It wasn't the explosive, outward kind of anger, but a deep, simmering indignation at the waste of potential, the stifling of genuine talent, and the fundamental disrespect shown to dedicated employees. She thought of the holidays she had missed, the family gatherings she had skipped, the personal sacrifices she had made for a company that, through Herr Braun, had shown her so little value. The injustice felt sharper now, viewed through the lens of her meticulously gathered evidence. She saw colleagues struggling under unfair workloads, while others coasted, receiving praise for work they barely touched. She saw projects falter because Herr Braun insisted on putting the visible person in charge, ignoring the quiet expert who could have guided it to success. It wasn't just about her bonus anymore. It was about the health of the workplace, the morale of the truly dedicated, and the long-term success of the company itself. She knew, with a certainty that chilled and emboldened her, that she could not let this stand. The documentation wasn't just a record, it was a responsibility, but presenting it carried immense risk. To whom could she go? The company structure felt opaque, the lines of authority blurred above Herr Braun, reaching up into the distant, almost mythical realm of senior management, and the owner, a figure rarely seen, known only by the name Mr. Schmidt. The thought of approaching someone in that echelon felt daunting, like trying to reach a king in his castle. Would they listen? Or would they dismiss her, side with the established manager, and retaliate? The fear was real, a cold knot in her stomach whenever she considered the possibilities. But the alternative was to do nothing, to continue being invisible, to watch the unfairness persist, potentially harming not just her own career, but the careers of others, and the company itself. That prospect felt even more unbearable than the risk of action. She spent days weighing her options, researching company policies on whistleblowing, trying to understand the hierarchy above Herr Braun. She learned that Mr. Schmidt, the owner, was known for being detail-oriented, perhaps even notoriously so, and had a reputation for sudden, decisive action when issues were brought to his attention, though getting his attention was the challenge. A standard HR complaint might simply be routed back to Herr Braun, or buried in bureaucracy. A formal grievance might be dismissed as a personal vendetta. What she had was data, facts, a systematic breakdown of performance versus recognition, effort versus reward, responsibility versus accountability. It was a business case for removing Herr Braun, disguised as a personal complaint. She decided her best chance was to bypass the usual channels, to find a way to put the information directly into the hands of someone who had the authority to act and the inclination to care about the details. She learned that Mr. Schmidt had an executive assistant, a long-tenured woman named Ingrid, who was known for her discretion and her unwavering loyalty to Mr. Schmidt, but also for her fair-mindedness. Melina decided this was her path. She couldn't just email the dossier. It needed to be presented carefully, explained clearly, emphasizing the objective, factual nature of the evidence. She spent hours refining a summary document, a concise, professional overview of the patterns her documentation revealed, highlighting the potential business implications of Herr Braun's mismanagement, not just the personal impact on employees. She practiced what she would say, how she would frame the conversation, ensuring her tone was professional, factual, and devoid of personal emotion. Even though her heart hammered with a mixture of fear and resolve. The day she decided to act, she dressed meticulously, arrived early, and waited near the executive offices, her carefully prepared documents hidden in her unassuming work bag. She felt a quiet determination settle over her, a sense that this was the culmination of months of hidden effort, a single, pivotal moment that could change everything, or cost her everything. She waited for Ingrid, the gatekeeper to the ultimate authority figure, her hands trembling slightly, but her resolve firm. The time had come to step out of the shadows. The moment of truth arrived. Melina saw Ingrid, the executive assistant, arrive and head towards the executive offices. Taking a deep breath, Melina approached her, her voice steady despite the internal turmoil. "Miss Ingrid? Excuse me, could I speak with you for just a moment?" Ingrid, a woman with kind but shrewd eyes, paused, a hint of surprise on her face. Melina was not someone who typically approached the executive suite. "Yes, Melina? What is it?" Melina explained, briefly and professionally, that she had some information of a sensitive nature regarding departmental operations that she believed Mr. Pleistennacher Schmidt should be aware of, but she wasn't sure how best to present it. She emphasized that it was factual and documented, not a personal complaint. Ingrid studied her for a moment, sensing the seriousness in her demeanor, so unlike Melina's usual quiet presence. Perhaps something in Melina's calm intensity, or Ingrid's own long experience in discerning genuine concerns from petty complaints, made her listen. "Come to my desk," Ingrid said, her tone softening slightly. In the quiet anonymity of Ingrid's workspace, Melina briefly outlined the nature of her documentation, focusing on the patterns of inefficiency, inconsistent reporting, and potential financial discrepancies she had uncovered through observing Herr Braun's management rather than just the personal unfairness. She showed Ingrid the summary document, highlighting specific examples without revealing the full depth of her dossier immediately. Ingrid read the summary, her expression becoming serious. She asked concise, probing questions, and Melina answered truthfully, presenting facts and evidence, not opinions or accusations. She explained that she had worked every holiday, been denied recognition, and that this had prompted her to look closer at the systemic issues within the department. She presented her own experience not as the cause of her investigation, but as the catalyst that revealed the underlying problems. Ingrid listened intently, her initial skepticism giving way to concern as she absorbed the details. She recognized the names, the projects, the dates. Melina's quiet, factual presentation was far more compelling than an emotional outburst would have been. She saw the meticulousness of Melina's work reflected in the organization and detail of her documentation. After a thoughtful silence, Ingrid looked up. "Melina, this is significant. If true." Melina met her gaze directly. "It is true, Ms. Ingrid. Every detail is documented, with supporting evidence." Ingrid nodded. "Mr. Schmidt is a busy man and he relies on facts. Your approach is wise." She paused, making a decision. Leave this summary with me, and the full documentation securely. I will review it and decide how best to present it to him. It might take time. Melina handed over the documents, a mix of relief and renewed anxiety washing over her. She had taken the leap. Now she had to wait. The following days were agonizing. The office felt normal, yet Melina felt acutely aware of her secret. She watched Herr Braun, still oblivious, still loud, still managing in his usual, self-serving way. She wondered if Ingrid had shown the documents to Mr. Schmidt, what his reaction had been, if her meticulous work would be dismissed, if she had made a terrible mistake. The tension was almost unbearable, a constant knot in her stomach. She performed her job flawlessly, not wanting to give anyone any reason to question her competence or dedication should her actions come to light prematurely. She noticed Ingrid observing her sometimes, a brief, knowing look that Melina couldn't quite interpret. It offered neither reassurance nor alarm, simply a continuation of the tense uncertainty. 3 weeks passed. The holiday season was well and truly over. The office had settled back into its post-holiday rhythm. Melina had almost convinced herself that nothing would come of it, that her effort had been in vain, that the system was too entrenched, the gatekeeper too powerful. She felt a resurgence of the old despair, the feeling of being invisible, her efforts wasted. Then, the subtle shifts began. Whispers circulated in the office. There were hushed conversations among managers. Herr Braun seemed less jovial, more stressed, seen having urgent, closed-door meetings. External consultants, looking sharp and carrying briefcases, were seen entering and leaving the executive offices and, sometimes, the departmental areas. The word audit started circulating, first as a rumor, then as a confirmed reality. Melina listened, observed, and continued her work, giving no indication that she knew more than anyone else. She recognized some of the questions the external consultants were asking, echoing the very inconsistencies and practices she had highlighted in her documentation. The audit was real, and it was focused, and it was happening 3 weeks after she had given her dossier to Ingrid. A cold, satisfying certainty settled over her. Her documentation had landed exactly where it needed to, and it was having an effect. The tense waiting was giving way to the quiet observation of consequences unfolding. The edifice of unfairness was beginning to crumble, brick by meticulous brick. The audit intensified over the next week. The external consultants were everywhere, asking questions, requesting documents, scrutinizing processes. The atmosphere in the office shifted from post-holiday complacency to nervous tension. Herr Braun was visibly flustered, spending long hours in meetings, his usual loud confidence replaced by a strained, anxious demeanor. He barked orders, avoided eye contact with many employees, and seemed constantly on edge. Melina watched from her quiet corner, a silent observer in the unfolding drama. She was asked a few standard questions by the auditors about her role and responsibilities, and she answered truthfully and factually, presenting her own consistent performance records when requested, without betraying any knowledge of the deeper investigation. Her calm, professional demeanor and her organized records stood in stark contrast to the hurried, sometimes evasive responses the auditors seemed to be getting from others, particularly those close to Herr Braun. It was becoming increasingly clear to everyone that this wasn't just a routine check. Something significant had triggered a focused investigation into the department's management and operations. Rumors flew, speculations ranged from financial misconduct to gross mismanagement. Melina listened to the gossip, but she knew the truth. It was a systemic failure, enabled by a manager who prioritized appearance over performance and overlooked the very people who kept things running. She saw the stress on her colleagues, the uncertainty, and a pang of guilt shot through her. Her action had caused this disruption. But it was quickly tempered by the realization that this disruption was necessary. The underlying issues were creating a toxic and unfair environment, and without this catalyst, they would have continued, silently eroding morale and efficiency and perpetuating the injustice. This was not destruction for its own sake, but a necessary demolition before rebuilding could begin. One afternoon, Herr Braun was called into Mr. Schmidt's office. The door closed behind him, and he didn't emerge for hours. When he finally did, escorted by two individuals Melina didn't recognize, his face was pale, his shoulders slumped. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't make eye contact, simply gathered a few personal items from his office under their watchful eyes, and was gone. The silence he left behind was deafening. The office buzzed with speculation, but the truth was clear. Herr Braun was no longer their manager. The gatekeeper had been removed. A palpable shift occurred in the atmosphere. A mixture of shock, relief, and uncertainty hung in the air. For Melina, it was a moment of quiet vindication. Her meticulous, hidden work, born of injustice, had brought about this necessary change. The invisible had made the powerful visible, his flaws, his failures, his unfairness. Later that day, Ingrid approached Melina's desk. Melina's heart pounded. This was it, the consequence. Was she about to be thanked or blamed? Ingrid smiled, a warm, genuine smile this time. "Melina?" she said softly. "Mr. Schmidt would like to see you in his office. He asked specifically for you." Melina nodded, a mixture of trepidation and anticipation filling her. She walked towards the executive offices, the same path she had taken weeks earlier with her dossier, but this time she walked with a different kind of purpose. She wasn't delivering information. She was being summoned by the man who had received it. She entered the executive suite, a space of quiet power she had only glimpsed before. Ingrid showed her to Mr. Schmidt's office. It was large, with expansive windows overlooking the city, a stark contrast to Herr Braun's confined space. Mr. Ford Rons. Schmidt was standing by the window, a man whose presence commanded respect, not through bluster, but through quiet authority. He turned as she entered, and his gaze was direct, intelligent, and surprisingly kind. He didn't offer a fake smile or empty pleasantries. He simply nodded towards a comfortable chair. "Melina," he said, his voice calm. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." Melina sat, her back straight, her hands resting in her lap. She met his gaze, ready for whatever was to come. This was the man her detailed work had reached, the man who had acted upon it. The catalyst was about to speak. Mr. Schmidt sat down opposite Melina, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. He held a file in his hands. Her file, Melina realized with a jolt. The meticulous collection of her observations, her data, her hidden work. "Melina?" he began, his voice steady. "Ingrid brought this to my attention a few weeks ago." He tapped the file. "I must admit, initially I was skeptical. Claims of mismanagement, especially against someone like Herr Braun, who presented a very confident facade." He trailed off, a flicker of something like regret or frustration crossing his face. "But Ingrid vouched for your character, your work ethic, and the documentation itself. It is extraordinarily thorough." He opened the file, leafing through the pages. The level of detail here. Timestamps, cross-references, specific instances documented over many months. It's clear this was not done in haste, or out of simple spite. This required immense dedication, patience, and integrity. He looked up, meeting her eyes directly. "It took us some time to verify everything, to connect the dots you provided. But the audit confirmed it. Every point you raised about Herr Braun's mismanagement, the inconsistencies, the unfair practices, it was all accurate. More than accurate, it was a roadmap to systemic issues I was completely unaware of." He leaned forward slightly. "Frankly, you have uncovered a significant problem in that department, one that was costing us in efficiency, in morale, and potentially in reputation. Herr Braun's focus was on appearances, not on substance, and he failed to recognize, or perhaps deliberately suppressed, the value of quiet competence like yours." Melina listened, a wave of emotion washing over her. It had been seen. Her hidden work, her quiet struggle, her meticulous documentation, it had all been seen, validated, and understood by the highest authority in the company. The years of feeling invisible, of being overlooked, culminated in this moment of profound recognition. Mr. Schmidt continued, his tone thoughtful. It takes courage to do what you did, Melina. To stand up, quietly but firmly, against an entrenched system. To risk your own position to bring the truth to light. Most people would have just left, or complained amongst themselves. You chose a different path, a harder path. He closed the file. Herr Braun has been transitioned out of the company. The audit is still ongoing, ensuring we address all the issues you identified. But the department needs leadership, stability, and a fundamentally different approach. He paused, a significant weight given to the silence. Then he looked at her, a new kind of appraisal in his eyes. You? Our documentation wasn't just about identifying problems. It demonstrated an intricate understanding of how that department should run, the processes, the dependencies, the points of failure. It showed a level of insight and attention to detail that is precisely what is needed now. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile this time. Melina, I need someone to oversee the transition in your department. Someone who understands its complexities intimately. Someone who values integrity and recognizes genuine contribution. Someone who has proven they can see what others miss and isn't afraid to do the hard work. He stood up and walked around the desk, extending his hand. Would you be willing to step into the role of interim department manager? To lead the transition, implement the necessary changes, and help us build a better, fairer environment? Melina stood up, her legs shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the moment. The offer wasn't just a job, it was a validation of everything she was, everything she had done, everything she had been denied. It was the ultimate recognition of her value, not for being visible or loud, but for being competent, honest, and having the quiet strength to pursue justice. Yes, Mr. Schmidt, she said, her voice clear and firm. I would be honored. His handshake was firm. The role will come with the authority and resources you need. And yes, he added, a knowing look in his eyes, it will also come with the compensation and recognition you have more than earned. He wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her the visibility she deserved, on her own terms. The invisible woman of the department was finally, powerfully, seen. Melina walked out of Mr. Schmidt's office feeling as though she were floating. The sterile hallways of the executive floor seemed brighter, the air lighter. She wasn't just walking back to her desk, she was walking towards a new future, a future she had, against all odds, helped to create through her quiet determination and unwavering integrity. She returned to her department, where the atmosphere was still thick with the aftermath of Herr Braun's abrupt departure. Colleagues were talking in hushed tones, speculating about what would happen next. When Ingrid arrived a short while later and formally announced Melina's interim appointment, a wave of shock rippled through the room, quickly followed by murmurs of surprise, and for some, genuine relief and curiosity. Melina, standing slightly straighter than usual, met their gazes with calm confidence. She didn't gloat, didn't dwell on the past. Her first words were about the future, about rebuilding trust, fostering a fair environment, and focusing on the important work ahead. She spoke not of visibility or impact, in the shallow sense Herr Braun had used, but of collaboration, recognition for genuine effort, and the importance of every team member's contribution, no matter how quiet. Over the following weeks and months, Melina embraced her new role with the same meticulousness she had applied to her documentation. She implemented fairer processes, ensured workload was distributed equitably, and, crucially, made a point of seeing and acknowledging the quiet efforts of her team members. She remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, and she made sure no one under her leadership felt that way. She restructured reporting lines, streamlined communication, and focused on empowering her team. The change in the department was palpable. Morale improved, efficiency increased, and a sense of trust began to develop. Melina wasn't a loud, charismatic leader like Heilbronn had pretended to be. She was a thoughtful, fair, and highly competent one. She led by example, working hard, but also ensuring others were given the recognition they deserved. She championed the hidden gems within her team, giving them opportunities to shine, to be visible for their contributions, not their performance of busyness. Mr. Schmidt watched her progress with satisfaction. The interim role quickly became permanent. Melina thrived, proving that her skills extended far beyond project coordination. She understood the human element of leadership, the critical importance of valuing every individual, the corrosive effect of unfairness, and the power of genuine, quiet competence. She had saved the department, not through grand gestures, but through truth and integrity. Her story became a quiet legend within the company, a testament to the fact that the most valuable employees are not always the loudest or the most visible, but often the ones working diligently in the background, holding everything together. It was a lesson for everyone, for management, about the importance of truly seeing their employees, for employees, about the quiet power of integrity and the courage to document truth, and for Melina herself, about the unexpected journey from invisibility to leadership. The project coordinator who worked every holiday, who was told this wasn't her year, had not only proven them wrong, but had fundamentally changed the system that had tried to diminish her. Her year had arrived, brought forth not by favor, but by the undeniable force of her own quiet, powerful truth. Melina stood in her new office, smaller than Heilbronn's had been, but filled with a different kind of light, a light of earned respect and purpose. She looked out the window at the city of Bremen, a city where countless people were likely working just as hard as she had, hoping to be seen, hoping for their year to come. She thought back to that moment in Heilbronn's office, the sting of dismissal, the cold decision to start documenting. It felt like a lifetime ago. Her journey had been one from silent endurance to quiet action, from invisibility to influence. It wasn't a path she had sought out of ambition, but one she had been compelled to take out of a sense of justice and a refusal to let her work, and the work of others, be diminished. Her story is a reminder that worth is not always measured by accolades or public praise. It is measured by integrity, by dedication, by the quiet commitment to doing what is right, even when no one is watching. Sometimes, the most powerful actions are not the loudest ones, but the most meticulous, the most truthful. And sometimes, the people holding everything together are the ones standing quietly in the background, unseen but indispensable. So, have you ever felt invisible? Remember Melina. Remember that your quiet strength, your integrity, your dedication, it has immense value. Keep doing the good work, keep the records, keep your truth close. Because you never know when your year will arrive, not because someone gives it to you, but because you have, through your own unwavering merit, made it impossible for them to overlook you any longer. Share this story. Remind someone today that their hidden efforts matter, that their quiet competence is powerful, and that integrity, in the end, always builds the strongest foundation. Your time to be seen might be closer than you think.